Okay, we're live on YouTube and I'll start it here so people can start coming in on Zoom also. Okay, we're live on YouTube and hang on. I'll start it here. There. Whoops.
We don't need to hear you twice.
No, I thought I had paused it, but there we go. Now we're live on Zoom also. Yeah, but just in case you missed me, you could hear it again 5 seconds later. Okay, so people are coming in. We'll give them a couple minutes to start getting here, and then we'll put Janice up to do spotted owl calls. I'm excited. This is going to be fun. We'll wait till it's exactly 1 o'clock so as many people can enjoy them as possible. All right. It is 1 o'clock in the Central Time Zone in the United States. So while we wait for other people to connect with us, Janice Reid, our speaker, is going to be entertaining us with a variety of spotted owl vocalizations. So Janice, go for it.
Okay, the typical four-note call is um, ooh, 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 ooh. That's more of a male call because I tend to have a little deeper call. The female is slightly higher pitch, which I can sometimes do. Ooh, 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 ooh. It's a slight increase in the pitch. And then there is a contact call, which is used to communicate in short distances, usually around nests. And it's a and then there's the kind of upset call for owls that are telling you to pretty much get out of here. And it's a ow, 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 ow. So that's all I have in my repertoire there.
Oh, you can do the baby call, the baby
Oh, the
begging
baby
call.
call, yeah. A juvenile spotted owl will do a shh, shh.
Do they have any sort of equivalent to the barred owl caterwauling?
Um, I don't think so. They do a series call, which is a ooh, 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 ooh.
And do each of the three subspecies sound slightly different in their territorial hoot?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know.
And you worked with the northern ones, right?
Northern spotted owl, yes.
Okay.
I did some work on the California spotted owl too. I just can't remember if there was much of a difference.
Okay. But you said the female spotted owls don't hoot that much?
They do hoot, but the males are usually the ones that are more of the territorial um, of the pair, and so you will get the males calling typically first, and sometimes the females don't call at all, and you don't know they're there until you actually walk in and find the male, and then all of a sudden the female shows up. So
And so in the barred owl, the male has a lower call and a shorter all at the end, and the female has a higher voice with a longer drawn out all on the end. Are spotted owls similar?
hmm, no, they have this pretty much the same four note calls. And occasionally an individual will have a five note call, which is that last note is just a double oh, 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 oh. Just like a little extra kick on the end.
And is it in a bird that does that, do they do it most of the time or when they're more upset or
Um, they do the barking when they're more upset. The ow, 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 ow. But the hoots are usually This kind of a location, more of a location call. Like here, I'm over here.
This is awesome. I love owl vocalizations. And I love that you can do so many of them so well. Joe, what was the comment in the Q&A?
Lance Benner says California spotted owls typically produce a 4-note hoot sequence. Northern spotted owls often produce a 5-note sequence.
Oh, interesting. So one less note.
Northern spotted owls do a 4-note sequence typically. So the 5-note is a little more unusual.
Okay. All right. How about we get rolling with things and people can filter in as they filter in. So yay. Thank you for everybody who's joining us here today. I'm located in Houston. Joe is joining us from Winona, and Janice is way over in Oregon. And the International Owl Center, for those of you who aren't familiar, is located way in the toe of Minnesota, right next to Wisconsin and Iowa. And like most of North America, we're kind of in a deep freeze right now. I think it was -15 Fahrenheit here this morning, but I know a whole lot of the United States is way cold today. So this is an awesome thing to do on a very cold day. You might notice there's bike gear behind me. The International Owl Center currently operates out of an old historic department store built in 1902. So think of a small town department store, and that's what we're in, which does not meet all of our needs. One of the needs it doesn't meet is we don't have any separate acoustic spaces, and we definitely don't have any places where we can do webinars. And Owl City Cycles is right across the street from the Owl Center, and they're closed for the winter. So they're very kindly letting us use their space for webinars. And they have tons of cool owl gear here, and all kinds of other things. So when you come visit us at the Owl Center, definitely pop over and see Owl City Cycles also. So thanks again to everybody that is joining us. It's very important to have as many people hear, learn, and understand this information as possible, because this whole barred owl, spotted owl thing is really complicated, and there's no way just listening to the news you're going to be able to comprehend all the information that's going into making these decisions. So thank you for taking time out of your day to specifically learn more about what's going on and ask questions if you have them. We had people sign up from 17 different countries to join us for this presentation, and at least 41 US states, and I think most of the Canadian provinces. So awesome that there's lots of people here for this. Thank you to all of you who have made donations to support this series. It's really important to us to keep this free and open to everyone so that everybody who wants to learn can learn, and especially folks in other countries. If currency rates are vastly different than our currency, that this is just open so everybody who wants to learn can. So thank you to everybody who made donations so that we can keep this free and open, so everyone can learn. And a huge thank you to Janice for giving us a Sunday afternoon to share her broad amount of knowledge on this topic, and really cool owl calls too. That was a huge bonus. So logistically, if you haven't been part of one of our webinars, if you're joining us in Zoom, we have the chat turned off, but you can ask your questions in the Q&A and we'll address those at the end. If you're joining us through YouTube, we have some of our chat room moderators over there. Thank you, chat room moderators, for helping out in that field. Keep the chat on topic if you're in YouTube, and you can ask questions there, and our chat room moderators will get them over to us so that we can ask Janice. And bear in mind, lots of times we have so many questions, we can't get through them. So we're allotting a 2-hour time slot for the presentation and questions. We'll get through as many as we can, but that may not be all of the questions. And Janice has allowed us to save this. So if you have friends or family that weren't able to join us today and want to watch it later, they can watch it on the Owl Center's YouTube channel, and you can find the link on our website on the Virtual Owl Expert Speaker Series page. A little bit about Janice. She is currently the president of Umpqua Watershed, the Umpqua Watershed Board of Directors, and she is a wildlife biologist specializing in spotted owl biology and population dynamics and she's been doing that for over 30 years, so she's got some pretty solid experience. And she works to support strong environmental protection laws and use those laws, and works hard to bring science to the public. So this kind of fits right in with that. So thank you, Janice, for joining us, and I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Carla. Appreciate that. Let's bring up my slideshow. So thanks everyone for joining. As Carla was saying, I'm with the Umpqua Watersheds. I retired from the Forest Service in 2019, so immediately joined an organization, a conservation organization here in Roseburg, Oregon. And the mission is it is dedicated to the protection and restoration of the ecosystems of the Umpqua watershed and beyond through education, training, advocacy, and ecologically sound stewardship. And so today I'm going to talk somewhat about the work that I did while I was working for the Forest Service, the Pacific Northwest Research Station, and then talk some about the barred owl management strategy, which came out in 2024. Just a little history for some of you who may not have studied into the history of the spotted owl. It was listed as a threatened species in 1990. And with that came a lot of publicity. There are a lot of articles written about the issue, spotted owls versus jobs, and of course the spotted owl habitat was one of the preferred types of forest to harvest, those big old trees, and so this became a very controversial decision by the Fish and Wildlife Service. The populations of spotted owl were identified as declining, so they were listed as threatened. And so almost immediately we had federal harvest levels drop during right after the listing process. Largely though on private lands, it has continued to be about the same amount of harvest. And just to give you an idea of what that looks like, we'll just jump to a little time lapse to show you the study area here where I've been working in Western Oregon in the Coast Range, going through time since 1990. You can see the harvest levels are still continuing. This big block to the left is the Weyerhaeuser Millicoma Tree Farm, which is a private company land, which is on about their third rotation, I believe. So you can see the landscape is continually changing and harvest is still continuing in the landscape. I'll pop back to my, okay, oops, guess I'll start again. So you've probably seen this in a few of the other presentations that are in this series, but I'll just go over them again for those that may not have watched those. This spotted owl is divided into 3 subspecies, and each is listed separately under the Endangered Species Act. We have the northern spotted owl, which is present in British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and Northwest California. And the California spotted owl is typically in the Sierra Nevada and down into Southern California. And then we have the Mexican spotted owl, which is an inhabitant of the desert southwest of the United States and down into Mexico. In late 2020, the Fish and Wildlife Service had been petitioned to upgrade to endangered status. They concluded that it was warranted, but precluded due to lack of resources for the administrative and legal process. So the situation with the spotted owl is very dire, and I'm going to talk more about the northern spotted owl. That's where I spent the 30 years studying spotted owl in the Coast Ranges of Oregon. And one of the things that makes it really beneficial to study the spotted owl is that it is a very approachable creature. It's very curious, so it kind of lends itself to really gathering a lot of data. So we can encounter the animal, we can interact with it, and it provides us a lot of valuable information on many of its life history requirements, such as reproduction and survival. Some of the main prey items for the spotted owl in terms of biomass are the dusky-footed and bushy-tailed wood rats, the red tree vole, which is south of the Columbia River, which essentially the divide between Oregon and Washington, and then the flying squirrel. And wood rats are more predominant in the southern range of the spotted owl, the northern spotted owl, and makes up a major part of the diet. Flying squirrels are more predominant in the northern part of their range. And this sort of translates into the size of their home range. In Washington, where wood rats are not as prominent and they rely more on flying squirrels, the home range's size tends to be larger than in the South, where they have plentiful dusky-footed and bushy-tailed wood rats. So after the listing, there were plans to put together a conservation strategy, which includes the Northwest Forest Plan. And the Northwest Forest Plan was based on an assessment called the Forest Ecosystem Management Assessment Team Report. And this brought together many agencies and biologists and economists and ecologists to produce several options on how to manage the spotted owl. And the Northwest Forest Plan is basically option 9 out of that report. It's meant to protect the ecosystem and not just an individual species like the spotted owl. So it's sort of an overarching plan to protect that unique ecosystem. With that plan, there became some funding available for putting more demographic study areas on the landscape. So there were 8 federally funded demography studies, and they range in Washington, Oregon, and California. There's 2 in Washington, all 5 in Oregon, and 1 in Northwest California, are all federally funded studies. We had already started doing some of these studies before the Northwest Forest Plan came out, so we still had some baseline data. And so the study area that I worked on is called Tyee, and it's in the Oregon Coast Range. None of these study areas were really chosen randomly, but meant more to represent different areas of the range of the spotted owl in terms of physiographic province or ownership patterns or plant associations. So this is the boundary of the Tyee study area. It is deemed a density study area, which makes it somewhat unique from the others in that we surveyed all of the available forested habitat within this boundary, regardless of whether there were previously known spotted owls. So every year we would continue to survey the same area in the same way, regardless of where spotted owls were located in the past. And this way we could kind of do a real inventory of the area. The checkerboard ownership is also somewhat different than most study areas. This is a ownership pattern of alternating sections of 1 mile by 1 mile of public land. So the orange on here is public land, and everything in white is private land. Our survey season ran from March through August, so a 6-month survey season to inventory all of the area within the study area and document all of the owls. So this is some of the reproduction trends on the study area. We had pretty stable populations from 1990 on. You could see that there is some variation in the number of pairs that are in the landscape and the number of young produced. Spotted owls typically don't nest every year, but the pairs do occupy the site. So you can look at the proportion of sites that are producing young versus total number of pairs. And at some point here about 2006, we started seeing a real decline in the number of pairs occupying sites, and subsequently the number of young that are fledged. This coincided pretty much with a fairly steep increase in the number of barred owls that we were detecting alongside with our spotted owl surveys. So also in the study area, we could look at the amount of habitat that's available in all of the study areas within the Northwest Forest Plan. We would document the amount of habitat. So this is a proportion of suitable habitat that was available through the years. And you could see that all of the study areas had some decline in suitable habitat for spotted owls. And this lower line is actually a study area where I spent most of my time, which is the Tidy study area. Not only did it start with the lowest amount of suitable habitat, but it also continued to decrease throughout the study period. So every so often we get together, all of the study area leads and mathematicians and super smart people who know how to crunch all these modeling, all of the modeling, and put the data together and produce what we call this rate of population change. It's called lambda. And lambda gives us an estimate of how the populations are doing in these different study areas. And so if the point estimates are below 1 for lambda, that means population is declining. If it's above 1, that means population is increasing. And 1 is a stationary population. So you can see that all of the study areas in the Northwest Forest Plan range had point estimates below 1, meaning that all of the populations were declining during that study period. And this averaged out to about a 5.3% annual decline in the population. So if you think about you're having a bank account and you're losing 5.3% a year, it doesn't take very long for you to lose your principal on that, or your population level. So in translating that from what is the population level since the start of the studies, and in Washington State, we saw a considerable drop in the population from the beginning. Somewhere around 74 to 80% of the individuals were lost during that time period. In Oregon, not as steep, but still fairly significant, losing 60 to 75%. And then in California, 30 to 60% of the original populations were lost. And this does make sense when you think about how the barred owl was invading through this range, coming from the north down to California. So northern spotted owls are really a well-studied species. They're found only in Western America. They do have a pretty narrow habitat requirement, a specific diet, low reproductive output, declining habitat, and then they are also being outcompeted by the barred owl. And I think this has been covered pretty well, so I'll just touch on some of this information about how we know the barred owl came from eastern United States, and its travel path is generally accepted to be up through the northern plains of the United States or Canada. The barrier of the Great Plains is believed to have stopped the barred owl from having invaded the West in early times, but the way that humans have actually changed our environment has allowed that the barred owl to make its way through some of these altered environments, such as planting trees or precluding fire. The hunting of beaver and bison have changed that environment in the plains that allowed enough change for the barred owl to make its way to the west, and then also to the range of the northern spotted owl. So this is where the path is thought to have been through the northern parts of the Great Plains and Canada, and down into Washington, Oregon, and California, and even now into the California spotted owl range. So some of the differences between the spotted owl and the barred owl, you can see that they do have a larger mass than the spotted owl. They have about the same wingspan. They lay more eggs than the spotted owl. They nest more often, and their home range sizes are quite a bit smaller, so we can have more pairs of barred owls per spotted owl territory. They're pretty adaptable, able to exist in many types of forests because they are a generalist predator and eating a variety of species out there in the environment compared to the spotted owl. And so their populations are really, really high. So the numbers of barred owls to spotted owls in the environment is quite large. So one of the things that we did with the data in one of the more recent analysis with all of the study areas was look at how these barred owls were impacting spotted owls in terms of whether they were able to occupy their sites, reoccupy their sites even. And so what we found is in all of the study areas, there was a strong positive effect, meaning that the spotted owls were abandoning their territories at a higher rate when barred owls were present on the site. So that's pretty significant. And then survival trends, these are things that feed into that lambda, is looking at the survival of the adults. And the modeling showed that all of the study areas were showing declines, and they might have varied in timing among the study areas, but all of them were showing declines in the more recent years. And the areas with barred owls were actually showing sharper declines. So bring it back to the study area that I worked on. This is Tyee, and you can kind of see the outline here. In 1988, and like I said, we had some baseline data before the spotted owl was listed and before the density area really started. And so we did have known locations of spotted owls, and then we had a few detections of barred owls out there. So these are all the detections of spotted owls in the Tyee study area, and then the yellow is the barred owl detections in 1988. So walk through after 10 years, you can see that we're starting to get more barred owls in the landscape. Again, showing all the detections of spotted owls and detections of barred owls. In 2008, quite an increase in barred owls, and starting to be a little more equal with the number of spotted owl detections. And then in 2018, it's almost a reverse of what it was in 1988. So within that time span, we saw a very sharp increase in the number of barred owl detections. And so barred owls have a really large impact on the ecosystem because they pretty well eat everything. And this is a screenshot from a video camera from a person who, Frances Etherington, who has a webcam out on one of her streams. She actually documents quite a bit of wildlife. And she has this barred owl that actually took a coastal giant salamander from that little pool and was eating it. So they eat quite a bit of variety of animals out there, including what the spotted owl eats. They eat the wood rats, and but they also eat frogs and birds, other salamanders, other owls. They eat quite a variety of mammals out there, even quail, and it just goes on and on. They even eat the rough-skinned newts that have a toxin in their body, so they're able to actually survive and eat that animal. But all of these species, and this is just a sampling of what they eat in the environment. So they are deemed an invasive species because invasive means that a species can cause harm to a region in which they are not native. And barred owls are certainly taking their toll on the ecosystem. One of the things that may become a problem is that we have a flying squirrel that eats truffles, and truffles carry this mycorrhizal fungi that's really important to the health of the forests out there, particularly Douglas fir. And the role of the flying squirrel is to distribute those spores across the forest so that we have a healthy forest system. And if the barred owl is eating many more flying squirrels than a spotted owl could, then we could see a decline in the ability for those mycorrhizal fungi to be distributed in our forest. So it's that's just one thing that they could have an impact on. The other is just the consumption of all of the animals in this ecosystem is also affecting the predator base that relies on those species as well. And so I'll just talk about the removal, the process of the removal. And during 2011, the recovery plan for the northern spotted owl came out, and in that plan was Recovery Action 30, which was calling for barred owl removal experiments to see if we could actually arrest the number of barred owls in the landscape to help spotted owls. And so before that plan came out, this is on private land in Northern California, so they got permission to actually do an experiment. And this is on Green Diamond Resource Area. They looked at a before and after, or a control and treatment of barred owls on their study area. And they found that when they removed barred owls, that the spotted owl occupancy actually started to come back. In the area where they didn't remove barred owls, the spotted owl occupancy continued to decline. So their results actually showed that that it was possible. Since then, there have been not just the green diamond here, and the green here is the study area that I was just talking about. But there have been other studies in California now looking at removal of barred owls There's some metrics here for each of the study areas where it's the number of barred owls removed. And the shaded areas here are when barred owls are removed in those studies. And we have the percentage of sites where barred owls are occurring. So when they're removing them, the number of barred owls is actually declining in these removal periods. Subsequently, the percentage of sites where spotted owls occur, you can see when nothing is done, and this is no removals in this Willow Creek study area. So barred owls continue to increase, spotted owls continue to decrease. And so when there are removals in these other study areas, you can see that the occurrence of spotted owls is either leveling off or starting to come up a little bit. And then that also translates into number of young fledged. When no barred owls are removed, the number of young fledged continues to decline. But when barred owls are removed, you can see there's some stabilization of the number of young produced or a slight increase in some of these study areas. Also in Oregon and Washington, there were some removals as well. And they had some control and treatment areas. Control meaning that no barred owls were removed, and treatment where barred owls were removed. So in all of those study areas, it showed the numbers of spotted owls and total number of young fledged actually started to improve in the spotted owl population when barred owls were removed. So several experiments have been conducted and showing favorable results for the spotted owl. So the experiment is over and it's time to implement. And so the recovery plan for the spotted owl came out, or the barred owl management strategy came out in 2024 with proposals to reduce barred owl population and improve the chances of survival and recovery of the northern spotted owl, and prevent the declines in the California spotted owl from competition with barred owls. This is a Fish and Wildlife Service strategy, and I haven't been involved in it, so I'm going to try and explain it the best I can. And we know that Fish and Wildlife Service manages wildlife, not habitat. So this is their plan to convince people to or agencies to help the spotted owl recover. So where does this happen? The strategy is for the Pacific Northwest and parts of California, focus on forests where spotted owls still live and could recover. It also includes nearby areas where barred owls are spreading. And there's basically three types of removal. There's site management, general management areas for larger forest regions, and then specially designated areas. So a type of removal called spotted owl site areas. This is focused on one particular site, targeted areas where perhaps the ability to do larger blocks of barred owl removal is not available. The top priority would be sites that are recently active to give the spotted owls some extra help in furthering their reproductive activities. And the goal to give relief from the competition of the barred owl. So you'd look at an active site. This is a spotted owl site. And this little red dot is a spotted owl, and you can see several barred owls in the area. This is data from the Tyee from 2018. There's the little the nest tree locations that are in this site that are spread throughout this territory. And so if you're focusing on this site, you would maybe eliminate some of these barred owls to allow the spotted owl to reoccupy that territory. The general management areas are large areas depicted on the map. This is from the strategy, the plan, where it encompasses about 200 to 300 spotted owl sites. Within that, not all the land is treated, because we talked about there's a lot of private land in there. And so you wouldn't be able to treat that without the cooperation of the landowners. Not all of it is very well roaded either. So the logistical concerns would also come into play. And the strategy talks about focusing on smaller areas of roughly 50 spotted owl sites to treat as focal areas within these larger blocks. And then there are specially designated areas, basically travel corridors or connectivity areas. So this area in the within the green line is one of these specially designated areas to slow the barred owl expansion and protect travel corridors from between bigger blocks, and allow early action before barred owls become too abundant in these areas. So these areas are chosen based upon where spotted owls still exist or recently occurred, where barred owls are increasing, and where there's still good high quality habitat for the spotted owls. You also have to have the cooperation of the landowners or the agencies where these areas are. So removal works with coordination with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and they use trained professionals. It's not a bounty hunting or not a hunting or bounty situation at all. Fish and Wildlife has the permits, they've got the authorization under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So agencies and private individuals or private or landowners would work with the Fish and Wildlife Service to make this strategy work. They would use humane methods, and they would carefully monitor before and after the firearms discharge. The areas that they survey would receive 3 visits, so they would come through and survey and remove the barred owls, and then do that in replication 2 more times in the survey season. And this ensures that future removal efforts will require less effort. So one of the things that is always coming up is, what about hybrids? And it's actually not that hard to tell the difference between a spotted owl and a barred owl. The barred owl has these very broad vertical stripes on its breast, and the spotted owl has more spots. So we have the barred owl and the spotted owl. The back, the back tends to have more white in the barred owl, and just very light little dots in the spotted owl. But we also have hybrids, and hybrids occur in such low incidence of barred owl in the population. During the initial phase of the barred owl invasion, there was a little higher incidence of spotted owls, what we call spotted owls, hybrids, because the barred owls that were coming into the region couldn't find other barred owls as easily as they could find spotted owls. Now, however, they have no trouble finding another barred owl, and so the incidence of hybridization is really not an issue. When these hybrids actually breed again, they tend to back cross with barred owls, so the incidence of spotted owl genes in those hybrids is actually dropping even more. The vocalizations actually are what the Fish and Wildlife Service would use to determine whether it is an actual barred owl or a spotted owl. These hybrids have an intermediary call between both spotted and barred owls, and can be difficult to tell initially. So field crews are told that if there's any chance at all that it is a spotted owl, they'll walk away. If it's a barred owl that makes, or a hybrid that makes a spotted owl call at all, they'll walk away. So the idea is to err on the side of caution, to take only barred owls, and not make a mistake and accidentally take a spotted owl, because there's never been a case where they have done that. So one of the things for identification too is just to look at the tail feathers. They're pretty distinctive. Barred owls have these really wide bars on their tail versus a very narrow and irregular band across the feathers. It's pretty distinctive. And in hybrids, it tends to be closer to a barred owl tail than a spotted owl tail. So that's one technique that you can use. You can see that the hybrid actually is favoring the barred owl tail configuration versus the spotted owl. So they do have the same impact on spotted owls as barred owls, and like I said, when they back cross, it's typically with a barred owl. And so far as I know, female hybrids are sterile, or mostly. When I retired, it basically was the way the data was. So if there's any information out there to show that female hybrids are not sterile, then send me an email. It is, again, very low incidence of hybrid in the landscape. And so vocalizations will determine that it is, if it's a barred owl, then they will be sure. So some of the key takeaways of removal is it's going to be specifically focused on helping owls survive and recover. They're going to use science and mapping and monitoring to guide these decisions. And participation is voluntary. It's not expensive. So one of these focal areas with decent road access and using 3 people is about $300,000 for 8 months of field work. And in the future, the Fish and Wildlife Service will take into account any new technology that will allow them to actually implement this strategy in new ways, more effective ways. And the degree of success for this strategy is directly proportional to the amount of effort that they're putting in. So as I was thinking about how we talk to people about the strategy and the necessity of doing this to help the spotted owl, I was thinking about the human impacts on the planet and how we have such a major role in some of the processes that are going on. We have a lot of direct and indirect effects on impacts on our wildlife, and some of these we can try and mitigate. We are constantly changing our environment in everyday life. When we're gardening, we're determining what species we want there. So, what is a weed? A weed is an organism in the wrong spot. It's an undesirable organism in the wrong spot. And so we tend to weed our garden to produce a certain landscape. And if you've ever dealt with English ivy and blackberries, it can be like a continual process. So if you want to create a desirable condition in the landscape, you're going to have to remove the species you don't want. You're going to have to monitor them, and you're going to have to commit time and funds to actually keep that area in the condition that you want it to be in. And I'm constantly thinking about this process of controlling invasive species. So just this week, our little town of Roseburg, Oregon, had a English hawthorn removal project in one of the little parks. And English hawthorn, when you cut it, it will resprout. And so we will have to come back to keep removing it. But if we want to produce a condition in the landscape to favor the native species there, we're going to have to keep coming back to this area and continue to remove them. But each time, if we come back more frequently, then the hawthorn will be easier and easier to remove. If you're really committed, you can actually get it pulled up by the roots like Ken did here, and that helps stop that resprouting. So some of the other species in the world that have caused problems, the eastern gray squirrel that occurs normally in the eastern United States, has actually caused some issues in the Pacific region, where the native red squirrel has largely been displaced by it. And when the gray squirrel was introduced in Europe in the 1870s, it really took off, and it's now an invasive alien species of union concern. What they found that when the gray squirrel is introduced into the habitat where there's red squirrel habitat, the red squirrels go extinct in 15 years. So another species that is non-native to the Western US is our American bullfrog. It's an Eastern US species like the barred owl, introduced to the West, and is having a considerable impact on our smaller native species of amphibians and reptiles. And it competes with birds, reptiles, fish, and other amphibians for food. And it also has the ability to spread pathogens. So one of the things that you may not have heard about is back when the peregrine falcon was having problems along with other raptors with the eggshell thinning because of DDT. Once they recognized that, and the falcons were able to actually produce young again in captivity, they still needed to find ways of reintroducing them into the wild. And when they did that, they found that some of their sites where they were placing these captive reared falcons were being picked off by great horned owls. So they embarked on a very targeted program of removing great horned owls around these areas where they were releasing these captive bred peregrines, so that the young peregrine falcons could be successful. We also have lethal removal as a conservation tool in cowbird management. So cowbirds are a parasitic species. They lay their eggs in other birds' nests, and then it encourages that species to actually raise the cowbird young at the expense of their own young. And so this has had a real impact on some of our songbirds, like the Kirtland's warbler, least-bell vireo, the southwestern willow flycatcher, all on the endangered species list. And so the spread of the cowbird into some of these habitats has actually been enhanced by some of the human activities out there. And so they have embarked on control of that. Here's some more examples of other lethal control used to protect species. We have the snowy plover, where small mammals are removed to help the snowy plover continue their successful nesting. We've had feral pigs on many of the islands out there, Hawaiian Islands, and even in Australia. So removing feral pigs can help the native species. The sea lamprey in the Great Lakes, removal of that has been successful in helping native fish. And then gypsy moth in the west, you'll see those little traps out that the Extension Service puts out. They're continually monitoring and trapping for this to protect our forest ecosystems. And then also, European green crab has more recently come to the west and affecting our native shellfish. So there'll be some actually lethal control of that. We've had feral cats removed in Hawaii to help the native bird species there. That's been successful. Removal of cormorants to help tern colonies has actually been successful in some areas and not so in others. So it's kind of a mixed bag on that one. We have introduced like foxes and cats in Australia that are impacting native animals and birds there. So removal of those foxes and cats has actually been successful in helping the native species. Rats have been implicated in many of the seabird population declines, and so removal of these rats, especially on islands, can help the species come back from severe declines. So why are we okay killing some species and not others? I mean, we know that the brown-headed cowbirds are killed by the thousands every year, so that Kirtland's warbler and other species can survive. And it is one of the greatest success stories for the Endangered Species Act. So just after trying to show that it's just not that removal is a tool for wildlife biologists and conservationists to use. It just we need to think about that we caused this imbalance, and barred owls are here in the range of the spotted owl because of us, and spotted owls are dying because of that. And then the real choice is, do we want both of these owls or just one? Because doing nothing is also a lethal choice. We're choosing whether to kill, we're not choosing whether to kill one owl or not. We are choosing the slow death of the spotted owl. A barred owl population will not have any trouble recovering, but once a species like the spotted owl is gone, it's gone forever. So the question is, will we allow an entire species to vanish when we have the tools that we can use to prevent it? And I will say that currently in the courts, there are some organizations trying to prevent the Fish and Wildlife Service from implementing this strategy. Umpqua Watersheds has intervened on behalf of the Fish and Wildlife Service, meaning that we support what the Fish and Wildlife Service is doing, and that actually is in the courts now. Meanwhile, the Fish and Wildlife Service has been involved in working with agencies like the Bureau of Land Management to implement this strategy while they wait for the court's decision. So with that, I'd like to thank all of the researchers out there that provided this valuable information, and thank the International Owl Center for hosting these webinars.
Thank you very much, Janice. If you want to stop sharing, then everybody can see us a little bit better.
Oops.
There we go. Lots of important data there. And I know we have some questions coming in. Joe, do you want to grab one to start with?
Sure. Somebody asks if spotted owl diet has always been more limited as long as you've been studying them, or did they evolve to be a very specific, to have a very specific diet?
I would say that the spotted owl diet's always been pretty limited because they are a specialized hunter and they prefer the older forests. So the older forest actually has a certain contingent of species there. And so the spotted owl hunts what is associated with these older forests. What makes the barred owl more varied in its diet is that it actually hunts in quite a variety of habitat types compared to the spotted owl. So if the barred owl was just focused on the old growth, it might tend to have the same diet. It probably would have a little wider variety, but it has a very, very wide variety because of the different habitats that barred owls actually forage in.
Okay, and this question came over from YouTube. Did the spotted owl start to decrease in numbers before the barred owl showed up in the Pacific Northwest due to harvesting of the old growth forest?
Well, that is the belief because of the high level of harvest that was going on in the early 80s. And so when the spotted owl was listed and harvest on federal forests actually decreased, we saw that the spotted owl population was stabilizing. I think the idea was that there was some lag effect from the harvest that had occurred, and the spotted owl population would continue to decline a little bit and then stabilize. But with the barred owl intervening there, there was really no time in there to determine whether it would just be habitat to stabilize the population.
I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. Since spotted owls don't produce chicks yearly, do the barred owls ever invade and occupy the original spotted owl nests? Or do barred owls ever eat spotted owl fledglings?
I don't know if a barred owl, there may be some instances of barred owls actually occupying the same nest as a spotted owl, but I can't think of them offhand right now. And barred owls have been implicated in eating spotted owls. I can't remember if that is a juvenile, was a juvenile spotted owl or not. I'm sure if we looked into the prey items, you could find that, but I can't think of them offhand. I do know they eat spotted owls or have been implicated in eating a spotted owl because someone actually saw a spotted owl in the talons of a barred owl. But that's what we suspect is the juvenile spotted owls are pretty well defenseless when they come out of the nest, and so if there's a barred owl in the area, they may find them. But I guess I'd have to say I don't know for sure on that.
Given the current administration's reversal on so many programs, are the multi-agency studies and the fiscal allotments still in place for the current research?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, and the way that we did the studies through 2019, 2020, we were using callback surveys, which we would go out and elicit a response from a spotted owl, and they would call, and then we would go and physically interact with them. Currently, I believe all of the study areas have switched over to these automated recording units. And so field work is limited to putting out many of these recording units in the landscape and then returning to pick those up to process that data in the office. So I don't think that the surveys are the same. When you get automated recordings of the owls in the landscape, it's typically more occupancy rather than looking at reproduction. or juvenile survival, which is some of the data that we did collect. So it's a slight change in the methodology of studying the spotted owl. And I'm not sure all of the study areas have done that. I guess since retiring in 2019, I don't keep up so much on everything that they're doing. So not sure where all of them are.
And would the using of the automated recording units likely be a lower expense than having the technicians out in the field regularly doing the surveys?
I believe it is, and that would be a good question for somebody who actually is doing that. I do know it lowers things like incidents of accidents in the woods from having field crew out there at night. So there are some advantages of doing that. It's all daytime work, so they're not having to traverse the landscape in some of the more dangerous times. So I suspect it is, but that would be a good another webinar. You could get somebody to come on and talk about that.
What is the position of the native peoples in the Pacific Northwest and California with regards to the proposal for the mass killing of barred owls?
So I'm sure it varies by tribe. The Hoopa Nation right now is 100% totally involved in removal of barred owls on their lands. Yeah, so it varies, but in California, I'm in Oregon, so I don't know for sure, but I do know that the Hoopa was one of the study areas that was involved with our analysis, and they've been doing the removal for quite a long time now. In fact, they got a big grant, I believe, to continue their work because they have been so successful, and they're not having to put a lot of energy into it because they did the big push, and now it's more maintenance. So they just go out and every year and remove the barred owls that have started to colonize again.
What exactly is the lethal removal method? Are they removing nests, eggs, nestlings, lethal trapping, hunting of adults, other methods?
Yeah, I guess I kind of glossed over that a little bit. I did mention that the methodology was, careful monitoring before and after. And the method is to use a shotgun. It's the most effective. It's the cheapest. And it is also the most humane method out there. So that's there's no removal of nests or eggs from nests that I know of.
Oh, just to throw in my own little question in there, is there anything about like not doing lethal removal during breeding season, or is it any time of year?
As far as I know, I know early on there was concern about removing adults with dependent young. I don't think that's the case anymore. And it was actually counterproductive to leave the breeders out there. So that is not a part of the current strategy that I know of.
And how exactly did we cause the barred owl's migration to the west?
Yeah, so there's if you watched it, I think David Weins and then last week also covered it, so I didn't cover it a whole lot. But the settling of the plains, as people started altering the landscape there, they were planting trees for shade. They were removing beavers, and beavers were always trying to keep the amount of trees down. They were often chewing on trees, and also removing the buffalo from the Great Plains was also changing the landscape, not allowing fires, putting out fires. And so as more and more vegetation started to fill in on the Great Plains, the barred owl found that condition conducive to traveling further and further west until they actually were able to encounter the boreal forests in Canada, and then they kind of just took off from there. That's in a nutshell.
Another question, they wrote, from what I understand, the old growth forests are reduced due to anthropogenic activities, and barred owls have invaded the area due to these changes in the forest structure. Are there efforts to protect the old growth forest?
Well, currently the Northwest Forest Plan is designed to conserve the older forests in many of the regions. There's what we call late successional reserves in the landscape. It's still not secure in that there's always efforts to make changes to the Northwest Forest Plan. And also as a volunteer at Watersheds, I'm involved in commenting on a lot of plans that the public agencies have that include older forests, and I continually make comments about how we need to conserve that for not just spotted owls, but other species that rely on that type of habitat. So it's not really secure. It takes a continual involvement with the agencies to impart to them that these older forests are very important.
What can you say about the training program involved in the people actually doing the removal, and like how many hours of training will they receive?
That I don't know. Again, I'm not with the Fish and Wildlife Service. I understand there may be an opportunity to have someone come on and talk more about that. I do know that there is an evaluation period. They do go out with the person, and there's quite a bit of scrutiny on who is allowed to be the one to actually do the removal. So it's very much controlled and scrutinized by people who have a lot of experience with spotted owls, barred owls, and firearms.
There's been some discussion about updating the Northwest Forest Plan. Given the plan focused on stabilizing ecosystems, is it possible barred owl removal might be considered an option to protect ecosystems, given the degradation of the degradation that the barred owl is causing?
Oh, is there yeah, that's a long one. I kind of got lost in it a little bit. I don't think the Northwest Forest Plan is work, who is implementing the Northwest Forest Plan is actually looking at the barred owl strategy in conjunction with that. They're almost like two separate. Can you read that question again?
Yes. There's been some discussion about updating the Northwest Forest Plan. Given that the plan focused on stabilizing ecosystems, is it possible barred owl removal might be considered an option to protect the ecosystem, given the degradation that the barred owl is causing?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to say, I don't know how that is connecting. the Fish and Wildlife Service basically has stayed out of talking about habitat management. Currently, the barred owl strategy is being implemented on Bureau of Land Management. The Forest Service has not started to engage the Fish and Wildlife Service on national forest lands. So hopefully that will change, because I think it's important. There's quite a bit of national forests out there that that if go untreated can really undermine the success rate for the strategy.
Did you ban all the spotted owls that you managed to work with?
As many as I could. It was there were very few that slipped away. There was quite a bit of effort to the ones that were very shy, but I believe that in most cases we probably banned it, well over 90% of the spotted owls that we encountered.
And I just want to point out that when you were visiting the owl center, you saw that our spotted owl skeleton was one that you had banded, which I think is kind of cool.
I guess, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't believe that you had a non-juvenile band on there like that. Yeah, it should have had a juvenile band on there.
We didn't put the bands on it.
You have to blame Eric Forsman for that one. He sent it to us that way.
He probably didn't think anyone would notice.
What were the odds that you were going to come visit the Owl Center and know that that was an adult band on a juvenile bird? Okay. Another question. The question Q&A just jumped. Okay. Can you think of any other pair of owls in a similar situation that we can learn from?
Any other pair of owls, like a species of owls, like that one is impacting the other like that? And not off the top of my head, I can't give it.
And in a similar vein, are there any other natural predators to spotted owls other than the barred owl?
Yes, there are. Great horned owls have in the past preyed upon juvenile spotted owls. Also, I think goshawks would be implicated. A pygmy owl has tried, but didn't have much impact. It's like a little fly to a spotted owl. Yeah, and I suppose if you're talking about adults versus juveniles, there's of course fewer natural predators for the adults, because some of the predators on juveniles would be like ground dwelling mammals, and the juveniles that are kind of defenseless that end up on the ground would be preyed upon by weasels and foxes and anything that kind of could get them off of the ground.
Can the AZA, so the American Zoological Association, or other institutions help with breeding spotted owls in captivity and hacking the young out for release?
Do they, or are they asking will they? What was the beginning part?
They're asking if they could help with that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I suppose so. I know Canada has tried a captive breeding program. The issue in Canada is that they have very little habitat for spotted owls left. And just rearing them in captivity and placing them out there, birds will often lose their innate senses of danger and their ability to learn from their parents. And so the success of having a captive breeding program is pretty low, I think. Now, I will say though that we did have the Sun River, the Oregon Desert the High Desert Museum out of Bend had some captive spotted owls that had been injured but were still viable, and they produced some. The male and the female were put together. They actually produced some young. We were involved in fostering those out, and fostering is different than hacking. When you foster out, you have to place them into a wild nest at a certain time so that the adults just can accept the newly placed young as if it was one of their own. And so we had an opportunity to do that. I can't remember how many times, but I do know that about 50% of the fostered owls actually survived. The problem with that is it is a lot of effort to actually find the right stage of development, the right tree to climb, because you have to climb up there and place the owlets into the nest. And you don't want to overwhelm the adults, so you don't, if they already have too young, you can't place two more young. So the conditions have to be really ideal and can often be difficult to match that up. So I don't think we should be relying on a captive breeding program as our solution to this.
This commenter says, I've heard that the presence of barred owls has caused spotted owls to vocalize less in order to not reveal their location. How do surveys confirm the number of spotted owls beyond recording calls?
I don't know that they can. If a spotted owl doesn't call, then you can't document it. So we're not doing the callback surveys anymore. They do have recorders out, but if the spotted owl's calls are being suppressed enough that they're not even picking them up on recording, then there is no way to verify that without I don't know, without new technology, I guess, would be the answer.
What do you see as the key action or policy implemented by the United States that led to a different outcome here than in British Columbia, where the species was extirpated?
Can you say that again?
So
Sorry.
basically, what did the United States do different here than British Columbia so that we still have barred owls versus them being extirpated in British Columbia? I mean, spotted owls. Did I say barred?
Spotted
Spotted
out.
owl.
Well, we still have a lot of older forest habitat compared to British Columbia, as I understand it. And so that helped with maintaining spotted owls in the landscape. We're also, at least in Oregon and even California, we are further south of the main wave of invasion of barred owls. So barred owls have already taken hold quite a bit in Washington State. They're doing pretty well in Oregon as well, but Southern Oregon is still considered like the front edge of the expansion range of the barred owls. So basically what we did different was just maintain more habitat.
You spoke about the dangerous times of doing research, like doing it at night. Could you tell us about some of your possibly dangerous encounters in the wild?
Um, Yeah, besides like some of the driving forested roads, I mean, there's, a lot of dangerous situations driving. Cases where if you haven't been out there and you're driving, and the road has, some obstacles on it or have washed away, it can be pretty treacherous. So, yeah, yeah, you have to be very careful out there. Um, I suppose that, one of the things that I always tell people too is that one of the most dangerous, animals I've ever encountered is another person out there. I can handle bear and cougar because they will usually, respond to you yelling at them or whatever. You can scare them away, but people have been, some of the scariest encounters that I've had out there. They're unpredictable. You can't tell what their intentions are by the way that they, respond to you. And so, I think that's some of the more dangerous situations is just, the people out there. I've had cougars. I've seen cougars. I've never been stalked by one, but I know other people that have worked out there. I've never been stalked by one that I know of, I guess I should say. And other people have. Bears have always typically run away, once they realize, that I was there. And I will say when I did a lot of my work, I, frequently, most of my career, I actually had, my dog with me, and so that was my early warning system to have, the dog working with me to alert me to, other dangers out there.
When was it first determined that barred owls were invading spotted owl territories?
When was it first determined? Oh, um, gosh, I think the first or one of the first, locations of a barred owl was on Vancouver Island in 1969 or something like that. I mean, I'd have to look at the map. I probably have a map here. Kent Lebizzi did a couple of really good papers on the, the actual, migration of the barred owl across the United States, and actually has known, researched, locations that he plotted a map. So if you really want to know, you can go look at his paper. I do have a list of, I should have put up, I have a whole list at the end of my, presentation of other resources that you could use. But, in his paper, he shows, exactly what the historical records show of where the barred owls were and what year.
I'll grab this last question that we have. Somebody is asking how they participate in a removal program at Elkton.
How they participate in a removal, like a private landowner is asking this.
There's only a first name, so I'm not sure.
Okay, is his name Alan? I am told that, the best way to do that, since, Elkton is, actually surrounded by, Bureau of Land Management land. I'm not sure if they're actually doing a removal out there, but, that you should get a hold of, the local land management agency, which would be Bureau of Land Management, and the Fish and Wildlife Service, office, which, would be actually Robin Bound at the Fish and Wildlife Service. Get a hold of, them if you want to participate, and start having a conversation about how you can make that happen.
Okay, and that is the end of the questions. We had several other comments that were in there, but we were sticking to the questions for what we're doing here. Joe, do you have any that you want to ask? I'm just trying to think. I should have been thinking about questions that I want to ask. And lots of people saying thank you. And there were quite a few people you knew here, Janice. And some of them were asking questions too. Um, Anything else you want to cover before we wrap up, Janice?
I just want to shout out to my friends in India who have the forest owlet. I don't know if I'm standing in the right spot. Forest
Yep.
owlet front space. Can you see that?
Yep.
If she's listening, Prachi and Giant and her daughter made this shirt for me. I was there. So another colleagues doing conservation on owls.
Yeah, it's always fantastic to learn from other people in different parts of the world doing different things because I kind of feel like, I mean, especially in the education world, each country kind of has this is how we do things, and it might be vastly different from how another country does things, and we can all be learning from each other. So it's really nice to see that we've got owl folks from all these different countries tuning in, learning more, hearing about what's going on here, so they can apply that to things that are going on in their countries also. Okay, so thank you again, Janice, for doing this and sharing all that information with us. I thought you had some great examples about how similar situations with other animals have played out in the country. That was very helpful for me as an educator to be able to share that with other people, that it's not an isolated thing. I mean, granted, it hasn't been owls, and in people's minds, owls are kind of different than sea lamprey and feral pigs and stuff, but you know,
Mhm.
in some ways it's another animal, but owls are
Yeah.
special to a lot of people on this planet, which is
I would say that, if, can you imagine if we had started removing the barred owls back when we first knew about the invasion? Because I know as they were starting to look at protecting the spotted owl, uh, we we continually brought up this other aspect, but it was like, oh, we can deal with that now kind of thing. And that's too controversial because some of the first attempts at really trying to stop this invasion were met with a lot of public pushback. And so answering all those questions about, okay, people would say, well, what about if we just transferred them to zoos? And it's like, well, nobody wanted them. Museums and there's just way too many barred owls and not enough people who wanted to take captive barred owls. Plus, it's like really difficult to catch a barred owl. Some people got really good at it, but they are a lot more wary than spotted owls are. But if we had identified that as one of the main threats early on in relation in the same vein as habitat, I mean, I think, we wouldn't be here where we are. But the more that we continue to just talk about it without doing any action makes it even worse, because we've had so many species where the rapid response was, oh, this is bad, let's get it done, like the gypsy moth. Oh, this is bad, we got to get it out of here before it spreads and gets out of control. And I think another example was the giant hornet that it started to invade Washington State, and they had just a few nests, and they just pounced on it to get rid of those hornets early on. And now, and they're gone, they're not there. So I think rapid response to some of these issues in conservation can really keep from us getting into a situation where now it's like it's really bad. So
well, thank you again, Janice, for sharing all that information. And I also specifically want to thank everybody that is watching this, whether it's live or as a recording, because you're here to learn more and understand what's going on. Very appreciated, because it's it's a big, difficult issue with a lot behind it. It's not a decision that was come to lightly or without thinking about things. Thank you to everybody that donated when you registered to help us keep this free so that everybody can be learning. I think that's really important, especially on this topic. And thank you to our chat room moderators over in YouTube for helping keeping things go there and filtering questions over here. This will be saved to the International Owl Center's YouTube channel, so it can be watched later. So you can either find it on the International Owl Center's YouTube channel. We have a virtual owl expert speaker series playlist, so you can find our other spotted owl webinars in there also. So we had one last week. And that was more from a genetic perspective. We had one by Dr. David Weens. We had one by Rocky Gutierrez. So we're getting quite a few on this specific topic. Plus, we have lots of other cool ones in there too. Or you can go to the Owl Center's website under programs and look at the Virtual Owl Expert Speaker Series. And at the bottom of the page, we have links to all of our saved programs on there. Not all of them have been saved for various reasons, but many of them have been. And next week, we're doing another webinar. Oh, thanks, Joe. Joe remembered to put up the link to the Umpqua Watersheds page. And you've got a page there that's very much about this issue that has links to the Fish and Wildlife documents, a statement that you've made, specific points. I feel like it's probably the best summary you can find on the internet about this topic that's manageable and you can get to. So Joe just posted that in the chat on Zoom. So I'm not sure if somebody can post that over on YouTube also. Next week's presentation is One Nest Box at a Time, bringing barn owls and kestrels back to Maryland's working landscapes, with Andy Brown and Alex Pellegrini from the Maryland Bird Conservation Partnership. So that'll be a little lighter topic than this one is. So thank you all for joining us. Janice, thanks for doing this. Look forward to seeing you next time you come visit the Owl Center. And invite everybody to come visit the Owl Center in little bitty Houston, Minnesota, and pop over to Owl City Cycles across the street too. So have a good day. Stay warm wherever you are and not too hot if you're someplace that's tropical. Bye-bye.
Thank you.